Hello everybody, and welcome to the July edition of the Farmers Supply Association Agriculture Report. I'm Randy Klepechka, agronomist with Farmers Supply Association. Today I want to give a pretty quick update on the rice crop in our area. We're taping on July 11th for this month's program, and we've got an incredible range of growth stages in our rice. We've got rice that has not had a flood on it yet, still hasn't had its pre-flood nitrogen or gone to flood yet, and we've got a few fields starting to head already. So a wide range of things going on. So I want to hit quickly several topics related to rice production as it goes right now. And some of these things will be timely for some and some will be timely for the other, but I think we'll hit a wide range of people today. First, let's hit on weed control real quick. The rice has kind of got that ragged look to it that we go through a lot of times this late in the season. Not all of it, but there are several fields out there that have grass kind of coming out the top and, you know, some things like that that make them look a little ragged. Not heavy infestations of grass in most cases. Most of it is what we kind of refer to as cosmetic usually, meaning that kind of affects the looks of the field but doesn't really hurt yield that much. You know, no magic bullet right now. We just remember in the future the three things we need to do to try to avoid this. One, we've hit on it several times this year, religious use of residual herbicides. We've got to really stay with our residuals. We need at least 2 or 3 out there at the beginning of the year to try to keep these grass weeds and other weeds from coming up. If we do have escapes from those residuals, we need to make our early post-emerge applications very quickly and timely. If we let this grass get too big, there's not much we can do with it. And then along with that, we need to be very diligent with our scouting for weed control as we go to flood. You know, I know it's hard to be out there the day that you're going to fertilize and go to flood, but within a few days, we'd really need to have a thorough scouting of that field to see if there's anything out there that might, you know, we need to take care of before we go to flood, because once we go to flood, things, you know, get more difficult to try to spray and control and things like that, plus the weeds just get too big. So let's scout these fields diligently right before we go to flood. So that hopefully will help us on the grass situation in the future. Next thing I want to hit on is the flat sedges and the ALS resistant sedges. You know, last year we just talked about the overall crop being grassy. This year the main topic that I hear people talk about are these flat sedges and these other ALS resistant sedges. There's several herbicides that can help us in this. I'll just hit on them quickly right now. This winter we'll have to do a more thorough program on this. Bolero and Sharpen as far as some pre-emerge activity. Then we get to post-emergence activity, several things to include. Loyant is outstanding on these annual sedges. I know a lot of people are kind of scared to use Loyant because of some issues we saw last year, but I'm telling you, Loyant is outstanding on these ALS resistant sedges, so keep that in mind in the future. Propanil is very good on them. Propanil combinations such as Rice Bow or Propanil plus Basagran. And then towards the end of the season, if we still have trouble, 2,4-D during that 2,4-D window can have very good activity on these sedges as well. So those are some herbicides to remember in the future. One other thing on weed control, if you have some coffee bean or indigo that kind of get through things, and you know, we're not going to control them or kill the plant that much later on in the season, but we can prevent that seed formation, that black seed that we get docked for. So we can use Permit, Gambit, Permit Plus, any of those halosulfuron materials. And if we get that out there before the seed forms, we can at least suppress that seed from forming and prevent that dockage that we're going to have from that black seed. That's weed control. Fertilize. A couple of things quickly right here. For our varieties, our non-hybrids, and I've hit this a couple of times this year, that 4 to 5 week rule. And a lot of people I still hear people talking about, you know, fertilizing the joint. Well, the joint, yeah, we do need the joint moved, you know, to be fertilizing, but we need to be at least 4 to 5 weeks from that big pre-flood shot. We need that big pre-flood shot taken up by the plant, or otherwise if we throw this mid-season out there before that's taken up, then we're not going to get use of it. It's going to be lost before we need it. So make sure we wait 4 to 5 weeks before we fertilize from that pre-flood application. That's the varieties. With the hybrids, remember we go with the boot shot timing there. That's from the time that flag leaf is fully extended until those heads start splitting open. Get that boot shot out there then. This gives us a milling bump. Also, it will you know, hopefully prevent lodging because that plant won't overgrow from that early fertilizer application. You know, if the rice is a little bit yellow and it's small and it just doesn't look good at all, you might bump that a little bit earlier, but otherwise let's stay with that boot shot. Next thing I want to talk about is diseases. There's kind of two schools of thought when it comes to rice diseases and other diseases as well. Some people do the automatic shot. They're automatically going to put that fungicide out there, and some people do the scout and spray method. They're going to scout for diseases, and if we see, the diseases show up, they're going to spray the fungicide then. Both of these ways can work. We've got successful farmers doing it both ways, so you can make either one of these ways work, just whatever you want to do on that. As far as the automatic timing, I think that's pretty much going to be your smut timing, and that's when that flag leaf is just starting to come out. If you let that flag leaf get all the way out, you're going to be just a touch late for that smut activity. So as soon as you know that's a flag leaf coming out, you'll see it kind of wound up and narrow and tight. When you see that coming out and you realize that is the flag leaf, let's go ahead and make these smut applications in. If you're just going for smut, Tilt or one of the generic propiconazole products is going to be your best choice there. You need to get at least 6 ounces of that material out there. Otherwise, if you're going for a more broad spectrum of diseases, I like one of the combination products. We're talking about Quilt XL, we're talking about Amistar Top, and also Stratego would fit into that category as well. So, keep those in mind, just depending on what you're going after. Again, just for smuts, let's go with propiconazole or Tilt. And if you're going more broad spectrum, sheath blight blast, just an overall fungicide application, let's go with one of these combination products. As far as sheath blight goes, we want to keep that off the top 2 leaves. So, sheath blight doesn't seem to be as big a deal to me as it used to. Our main thing, again, leaving it low on the plant and keeping it off those top 2 leaves, that's when it really starts affecting yield. So, scout it, and if it starts approaching those top 2 leaves and there's enough out there, and you haven't made an automatic application, that's a time for that application. Blast, be looking for blast lesions out there. Susceptible fields, susceptible varieties. Varieties are fields where you can't hold a flood or more sensitive to blast. So the timing on that would be a little later than the smut application. You really want a late boot into heading, preferably from about that late boot split time all the way up until the head is fully out of the boot. Once that head is fully out and that base of that panicle is exposed, then you're getting a little late for blast control. So let's keep it in that window right there. Finally, last is our insect situation. We're talking about stink bugs there. I think this is shaping up to be pretty much like most years. I saw a post on Twitter the other day where an early heading field was just covered up with stink bugs. That's usually the case. Those early fields, those stink bugs congregate. They assemble in one place because there's not many fields headed, so they fly to the first headed rice, and they really get thick on that. As the rice heading increases around and gets more widespread, those stink bugs typically will disperse and the numbers will go down. So we'll see if that's what happens this year, but that's what I typically expect. Remember, the threshold is 5 stink bugs per 10 sweeps of the net. When scouting for those during the first 2 weeks after heading. After those first 2 weeks, then we go to 10 stink bugs per 5 sweep, for 10 stink bugs per 10 sweeps. So 5 for 10 and then 10 for 10 the last 2 weeks. And once that panicle's in about 60% hard dough, then we can shut that off. Some people like to make those automatic applications of stink bugs. They say, well, I'm seeing some around the edge or something like that. Let's just throw it in with a fungicide. And those almost never save you an application. I mean, I'm not saying don't do it, but at the same time, you're almost certainly going to come back. If the stink bug's around, you're going to come back with another application pretty quick. So those automatic applications, throwing it in with a fungicide, usually aren't going to be beneficial to you. You're still going to have to come back and spray. So probably just go ahead and avoid those and just scout as the rice starts heading out. So, next month when we tape, we're going to have a lot of rice heading out and probably some turning color, and we'll talk about draining and some other issues like that. But until next time, this has been Randy Klepechka with your Farmer Supply Association Agriculture Report for July.